Hi, this is Everett, Everett's Watercolors. Welcome to my classroom. I'm broadcasting live from Chesapeake, Virginia, and my wife Gloria is in the studio with me. She's in the background keeping track of the transmissions and monitoring the systems. So while you're on YouTube, please subscribe to my channel. Give me a thumbs up. It helps my rating. And also, if you're on Facebook, give me a like and give me a thumbs up also. And make your comments, and I'll get back to you. The first thing I want to do is show you. I want to go over to my website, and I'm going to show you. My web page. And on the web page, you go to up here on the navigation box over here on the left, top left. You see live classrooms, and you go down there. Now these are where all the broadcasts are located. So you can go back here and look at. You look down the screen here, and you can see the previous broadcast, and the new one today will be down here right here at the bottom. And if you want to look at a previous broadcast, you go to this page, and you can see the program over again. So I just wanted to show you that so you can find out where it is. It's on everettswatercolors.com, and you go to the live classroom page. Okay, now what I want to do now is go over the procedures today. I'm going to do a painting today, a full painting. But I'm going to do it in three steps. And the reason I'm doing that is that each process or each step takes a little bit of drying time, and I don't want to wait for that, and I don't want to use a hair dryer and all that sort of thing. So what I've done is I've prepared 3 stages. As I go through each stage, I'll stop, we'll look it over, and then I'll transfer it over to show you the completed stage, and then move ahead to the next step. So that's how I'm going to proceed today. And first of all, let me show you my design phrases. I got some photographs that I want to share with you. Okay, this is my reference photo. This is the hiking trail, which the painting is going to be about, the hiking trail. It's got a mountain, got some trees, and it's got a nice hiking trail there. Let's see, let me get my... okay. And there, I replaced that tree on the right. I'm going to put a lone tree. The reason I like these branches. That tree over here to the right, I'm going to replace it with another tree. And I like the tree arrangement. I like the branches, and I wanted a lone tree with very few leaves on it, and it's an interesting shape. So I've modified the reference photograph a little bit by adding this tree. So there's my design sketch. You can see I put the tree in the sketch, and that's from the photograph. I put in the elements, the mountain in the background, the trees in the background, and then the trail itself. And from that, I prepared a value study. A value study is very important. This shows the dark and light areas of the painting. And so this shows the large dark areas or medium value areas. It shows the light background colors and so forth in value. So this is a value study. Now, one step further, I even did a color study. Now here I used my Holbein artist watercolor colored pencils, which I went over last week in my last presentation, how to use the colored pencils. Here I use them here to color in the design plan I had to give me an idea of the kind of colors I'm going to use and where I'm going to put the colors. So that's my design sketch with the colors added. So I'm going to take you over to my painting board, and let me get started. Yeah, I'm gonna do. I'm gonna send out a chat first to get that started. And so this is my on my painting table. I've got the setup here. Here, yeah, you got the okay. So on the main program, turn the lights on. There's a little glare over here, but just gonna once I put the paint in the palette, it'll go away. So there's a little glare here from overhead light, but you'll be able to see better with this light on. So here's my design sketch with the my value plan. Okay, and I've gone ahead and drawn in the sketch onto a 1/4 inch sheet of Gemini watercolor paper. Now this is 15 by 22 by 15 size as far as a sheet of paper, and the design and so forth I've transferred here to the 1/4 sheet of watercolor paper. 140-pound Gemini watercolor paper, archival. Over here is my palette, of course, with all my colors. And I have some, these are all, I'm going to use natural hair brushes today. These are, I've got a 1-inch over here. This is a 1-inch I use for washes. But I'm going to use my my silver brush, natural hair brush. I've got a 1/2 inch here now, and I've got the 3/4 inch natural hair brushes I'm going to use. Now I'll use several others also as I go further on in the painting. And also on each step, I'm going to also introduce the colors I'm going to be using. I think that's also very important. In step 1 here, I'm going to do the light background, the sky, the background mountains, and a little bit of the middle ground area here. This is light colors here. I'm going to use cerulean blue. I watch the shine on there. I'm going to use cerulean blue, cobalt blue, quinacridone violet, and green number 1. Okay, so let me get started. Let me get some paint mixed up here. This is cerulean blue up here. Beautiful color. I'm going to use that on the sky to get the sky started. Rinse out my brush. A little bit of cobalt blue. I'm going to use that on the mountain there a little bit. And over here, a little bit of quinacridone violet, just a little bit. And also in the light colors, I'm also going to use a little bit of green number 1, which is down here on the bottom of the palette. So I always get my colors out, get them ready for the painting. Rinse out the brush that I want the green in the sky. So I'm going to start out with the light colors first. And to get started, I'm going to wet the sky with clean water. This is a 1-inch natural hair brush. I'm going to wet the sky. Wetting the paper first helps the paint flow on the paper. It makes it a lot easier to get the flow to start. It's like a little wet on wet technique here. And I'm just going to wet enough of it here to get started. It'll make the paint flow very nicely. I've also got my board on a gator board. I've got the Incredible board, gator board for my painting board, and I've got it tilted at about a 10-degree angle. That also help the paint flow down the page. Okay, so I've wet the sky area, a little bit of the middle ground area here. Now, this paper really absorbs the paint. Paper absorbs the water very quickly. Okay, put that brush aside. Now I'll take my 3/4 inch brush. I'm going to pick up some cerulean blue. I'll load my brush. Always load it from both sides. And it's not a lot of paint here, just because I want a light value. So it's just going to be color in the sky. So the consistency probably of tea, because I don't want it too dark. And I'm going to come down Now see, I don't care if I go over some of these other sections because they're going to be painted over with a darker color. So just want to get the light sky in. Now I want a little bit darker over here on the right side, right corner, because the source of light is going to be from the right side. So I'm making this a little darker over here to simulate the source of light off here to the right. Okay, so I put the sky in. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take a half inch natural hair brush. I'm going to pick up a little bit of green number one. I'm going to put that down here toward the middle ground here. I'm going to put just a little light area here. Oh, this is grass and a little valley here where the hiker's hiking to. I'm going to put a little bit of green across there. This is a light value, so it's just going to be enough color to just color the paper here a little bit. And I'm going to put a little bit of color up here. There's evergreen trees here, so I'm going to put a little bit of color up here in the trees just to have a little bit of greenery in here, but that's going to be a darker value before I finish the painting. Okay, now before I leave this, I got one more stage. I'm going to put the mountain in. Now here I'm going to use the cobalt blue. I'm mixing cobalt blue here now on the brush. And just a little bit of quinacridone violet. Cobalt blue and quinacridone violet. I have a little test page over here where I'm testing the color on. Again, this will also be a light value. Now I'm going to I purposely went over this mountain a little bit with the sky because I want the soft edge. So when you want a soft edge, you put wet paint on top of wet paint, and it will automatically create a soft edge. So I'm putting it. This is the mountain color, just a light little purple with blue in it, bluish purple. I'll bring that on down here toward these rocks. Okay, now that's step number one. I got the blue sky in with light color. I got the mountain in the background and a little bit of green here in the middle ground. Okay, now what I would normally do, the way I paint is I set this aside and let it dry. And that may take 15 or 20 minutes. So to speed up the process, I'm going to put this aside and go on to the next phase. Step two. So this is step one, already dry. This is the second. I got the blue sky in with the background mountain and the green up in the trees and so forth. Now we're going to go into step number two. So I've got the light colors in there. Now I'm going to go into the middle value, which will be this tree, the rocks here, pathway. This tree here will be middle value, and these trees, this is all middle value. One large shape. So that's important on having a value study is where you're going to put the colors and what values you're going to put on there. Now, what the colors I'm going to use in step two, I'm going to introduce yellow ochre, burnt sienna. I'm going to use the same quinacridone violet and cobalt blue. So step two here now, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, quinacridone violet, and cobalt blue. Now I've marked over here. So far, I'm going to use 6 colors. These 4 I used in the beginning, and I added 2 more colors. That's 6 colors. And that's going to be all the colors I'm going to use in this painting. These 6 colors. It's a minimum palette of minimum number of colors. That's going to be one of my tips today. Okay. So let's go ahead and get this one. Excuse me. So I'm going to mix up. I don't need the green right now, so I'm going to take the green away for right now. I don't need the green right here. I don't need. I do need cobalt blue. So a little bigger puddle of cobalt blue. A little bit down here at the bottom, I've got my yellow ochre. That's a yellow ochre paint I'm mixing up. Burnt sienna down here. And I'm going to put a little more this time, a little more quinacridone violet. So now these 4 colors now, between the yellow ochre, the burnt sienna, the quinacridone violet, and the cobalt blue, the 4 colors I'm going to use now in this. Actually, it's the foreground area, and part of the middle ground. And I'm going to follow my value plan here to put this in. I've got rocks here, trees, and so forth. And you know what? I'm going to need to put that I need to put that green number 1 back on the menu here, because I have a tree also in this particular part. Okay, so planning my, I'm going to change brushes here. I'm going to use a bigger brush. Use my 3/4 inch. Use my 3/4 inch flat silver brush, and I'm going to start over here with. We'll start over here with a little bit of yellow ochre. And I'm going to start putting in the rocks. This side over here. Then I'm going to put in more color here, but this is just to get me started. Just the base coat here of yellow ochre. I'm going to continue over here. Okay, now on top of that one, I'm going to put in some burnt sienna. And the burnt sienna I'm going to put around on the edge, the darker side. And I'm going to leave some of that. Yellow ochre to show off some of the tops of these rocks. So I'm using a little thicker paint here. I'm really painting wet over wet, but what I've done is by adding more pigment to the brush, I'm able to paint and keep a fairly straight line. Okay, now I'm going to come down here over this middle area. I'm going to pick up some cobalt blue now. I'm going to take the cobalt blue and put into this section here, just a little bit of cobalt blue. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the bit of the yellow ochre. So with these three colors now, I'm mixing up, making some rocks here on the side. And this is all wet on wet. It's all wet on wet. Now, the last thing, I got some rocks over here also, so I'm going to be putting some of this color on this side of the road, the trail. So the yellow ochre is my base cover paint. The base layer is a little bit of yellow ochre. And over the top of that, I'm going to put the burnt sienna, a little bit of burnt sienna on top of that. And I'm going to have some rocks down here also. I'll leave some of those lighter. So I have some darks and lights. Okay, now I'm going to take some of the quinacridone violet now. Quinacridone violet and mix it in with a little bit of that cobalt blue. I'll make this edge really dark over here. So I'm adding in some of the quinacridone violet now. So this is the third layer, wet on wet. The blue added in with that brown and the violet will darken that edge up. It'll give me a dark value. So I'm trying to develop a sense here of rocks formation, rough edges. Rocks have edges, shapes, and this wet on wet, of course, the paint is moving a little bit, so it's with a darker value on top, give me some shapes here of rocks. Some darker colors over here on this particular side. Okay. Now, I'm going to let this dry just a little bit. Now I'm going to switch brushes here, and I'm going to take some of that brown, which is burnt sienna, mix it in with a little bit of cobalt blue, burnt sienna and cobalt blue. And I'm going to start putting in the tree. And I'm using number 12 round brush. This is also natural hair. This happens to be a Klinsky sable. And I really chose this tree because I like the shape of it. I like the way it was branches were, and a little more interesting than that evergreen tree that was in the photograph. So I went ahead and swapped this out to give me a more interesting shape pattern. And I'm putting in the limbs now. This is also what was attracted me was the shapes of the limbs. And this round brush gives me an opportunity to shape the tips. I can use that to shape the limbs themselves with the narrow edges. I'm putting these pretty quickly because I just want. This is really to give you an idea of how I would paint this particular part of the scene. And then I'm going to switch the brush. I'm going to switch back to the, let's take the 1/2 inch. No, I'll take the 3/4 inch, that's fine. Make sure I rinse out the brush. Rinse out the brush in a bucket here will keep it clean. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit of that green number 1. And there's an evergreen tree over here, so I'm going to put some green. I'll start with a base coat of green first. Just to get started here, just to get it started. There's a little evergreen tree here at the top of the rocks here. And I'm going to take that green, I'm going to add a little bit of cobalt blue to it. A little bit of cobalt blue. So now I've got a blue-green color. So I really haven't added any more colors to my my palette. I just mixed the colors I have to make it look a little richer color, a little darker. And now I'm just putting in some of the shapes of these branches here to make it look like an evergreen tree. Off to the side. And I'm going to pick up a smaller brush. This is a number, now this is a silver brush, number 12. And now I'm going to go down into the middle ground. I'm going to use this blue, the blue and green, cobalt blue and green number 1 again. I'm going to go down here and I'm going to start putting in some of the darker greens down here. This is still a middle value. So I'm still staying with my value plan. This is the middle value. And now I'm adding just the textures here. Hi Alice, I see you on the chat room. Very nice seeing you. Nice to see you. Yeah, this is a lot of fun. I'm just adding in the colors now, and really this stage now. I'm just showing you my process because I have a stage here that I'm going to show you I've already done. I'm adding in the dark, and this is a evergreen tree. So I'm putting in the evergreen characteristic limbs. Lots of evergreen trees up in the mountains and on the high mountain trails. I keep that color consistent here. There's another little tree right here. I got it blocked off. I'll just want to show a little bit of dimension here, that there's really a tree in front of a tree. And then there's a continuation of a tree line here in the middle ground, which goes just in front of the mountain. So I'll add that in. Yeah, got a little figure I'm going to put in here later. So we'll paint around that right now. And maybe I'll go over here a little bit, maybe a little bit more over here on this side. On this side. Okay, now a couple of things I want to show you. I'm going to use a rigger brush. This is the number 4 rigger silver brush, natural hair. And I'm going to pick up some more of this brown, which is burnt sienna, mixed in a little bit of blue and a little bit of quinacridone. So it's really a mixture, but mostly burnt sienna. But here I'm going to use the rigger brush, and I'm going to go in and make these fine lines here for these branches. So I'm using more brushes today just to give you some ideas of techniques. But this tree really intrigued me. I just like the shape of it. And I'm going to show here an overlap here. I'm going to put this limb across so it shows that this tree is in front. This shows this tree is in front of those trees in the middle ground. So overlapping is very important in art to show what is in front and what's behind. It helps give the viewer an idea of dimension and distancing and so forth. With this rigger brush now, we'll add in all these little fine limbs. I'm going to show you another technique here, which is something I've learned recently that makes it even easier. But before I go to that, I'll let that dry just a little bit. I'm going to put in the pathway here. Now the pathway is going to be very simple. What I'm going to do is mix. I'm going to mix a little bit of I'll use a little bit of this burnt sienna. A little bit of cobalt blue. We'll try to mix a gray. A little bit of quinacridone violet. A little more blue in that. A little more blue in that color. And see my test sheet here, it says that's gray. Okay. So before I put the paint down on the paper, I come over here and test it on my test sheet. Okay, load the brush. So I have plenty of paint in there, and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go ahead and put in the pathway or it's not a road, it's a pathway. Just rocks and sand. And what I do here, I've got a little bit of this brush here, a smaller brush. I'm taking a number 14 round again, this Kolinsky Sable. And I'm going to put this little bit of gray back in here. Continue the pathway over here in the front. Okay, I'm going to mix up I'm going to mix up a little bit of green just to finish this off here, and I'm going to go back to that tree line. I want to show you something really, what I think is a really great way to do a tree. Mix a little bit of cobalt blue with that green number 1, and I'm going to put some grass down here just to add in some another element. So next to the rocks down here, the pathway is going to be some grass, tall weeds. And I'll have some on this side of the road too. Just the pathway's got some rocks and it got some weeds. And I also think before I leave that tree up there, I'm going to put a little more color in that tree. Just no more strokes. And down here, I'm going to dull these trees down just a little bit. That's too light. Come down here and put just a little more color into that evergreen tree. Now, the little technique I want to show you now is that the limbs up here, and I can still work on that, but I'm going to just take a brush like this is a number 14 round. Take a large round, like a middle-sized round brush, load it with here I've got burnt sienna, a little bit of cobalt blue mixed together, gives me a light brown. And I'm going to use I'll use the side of the brush, side stroke. Load the brush. Always load the brush from the side. That puts more paint into the brush. Load the brush from the side. Then come up here and go into your branches, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that side stroke I just showed you, and that's going to look like the branches, the small branches are at the end of the little twigs into the larger branches. So rather than sit there and try to paint in all those individual branches, individual twigs, this will simulate or will indicate the number of branches or little branches and twigs that are at the end of the limbs. And if you go back to that reference photograph I showed you, there were probably thousands of little twigs on the end of this tree. Thousands. So that adds the texture or look of branches or twigs at the end of those things. Then you can go back in later on after it's a little bit dry. But I'm going to go ahead anyway because I want to finish this stage up. Is you take your rigger brush and you go back in, add in some more smaller over top of those marks you just made with that what I made with that round brush, and that will connect some of those shapes into the branches. So that'll give the illusion of those thousands and thousands of little twigs and branches that are at the end of the larger limbs. Okay. Okay. Well, that's step number 2, and as I promised you before, I've already gone ahead and did a complete section of this, but I wanted to show you. I painted in the middle values, added in some more background for middle ground colors and so forth in here. But I did the rocks, the pathway, the tree, and the little added extra tree colors in the middle ground. So let me show you a finished section I've done here. Okay. Now, with a little more time and taking my time and doing some careful painting in here, as you can see, I added more limbs and more branches here on this particular tree here. It's the same shape I used, and I added a little more color up here. But I've also defined the rocks here on the mountain side, or the rock side. But it's basically the same painting I did here and added here. So on step 3 now, I'm going to add in some accents. In step 3, I use cobalt blue. Before I go to that, okay, I've actually done 3. This is the one I just completed. We'll call this number 3 or C. This was number 3. This was C version or number 3. This is the B or number 2 version. B or number 2. And actually, I did an earlier study just for practice. I did a number 1 or an A, and in this one, I did a very colorful flow of colors for the rocks. Did very little definition, or just let it happen. Added the trees in there, and did the same thing with the pathway and so forth, and the same brush strokes up here in the tree. But I made a little difference here in the rocks on the pathway. So we'll call this number A. This is A, number 1. This is B, number 2. And this is number 3, C, version C. So I'd like to get comments from you. Which version do you like? I'm going to go ahead and work on version B because that's the one I want to use right here. I'm going to use version B on my first final steps. So what I'm going to do here on the 3rd step, I've got cobalt. Let me make sure I got my colors mixed now. I'm going to use cobalt blue. Burnt sienna. And quinacridone violet. So in step 3, as I said right here, this 3rd step, I'm going to add in cobalt blue, quinacridone violet, and burnt sienna. Now again, those are the same colors I've used before, so I've only used a total of 6 colors in this painting. But this will be step number 3. Now what I'm going to do now, I'm going to add in some darker values now in certain areas. For example, And I'm going to use my sheet over here. I lost my test sheet. Yeah, this is going to be a very dark mix. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to darken up. I'm really going to make a dark contrast here on this rocks, because this is my impact area right here. So I'm going to put my darkest darks against my lightest lights, which is this area right in here, to make that more emphasis in this particular area. So, and here's a light rock here. I'm going to leave that light. I'm going to continue to color up here. Now, as I get further and further away from the impact area, I'm going to have less and less dark color. I just want that to be really, really dark around the impact area. And I can add a little bit more up in here, just to give a little highlights. As I come on the other side now, these other rocks, I can add the shadow patterns a little stronger on some of these. And leave that one light. Now in the foreground here, in the forward portion of the rocks, I can add a little more shadow, because the hill is coming down, so this would be more out of light. The light's coming down from this direction. It's not a direct light, but it's light coming down. So I'm going to put a little more shadow here at the bottom of this area. So I'm just adding a little edge here to this hill or mass of rocks. I'm going to add a little edge here, give a little more dimension, showing that it's a little bit coming down, sloping down. Now, the rest of these rocks don't need much attention at all. They've already been defined pretty well. I'm not going to add. I don't need to add any more to that. And over here, I can also add a little more definition. This is, again, it's up near the impact area, so I'm going to put a little darker value up here. A little darker value next to the impact area. As I go away from the impact area, I'll get less and less, use less and less of that darker color. I want it to fade off. I don't want it to be a stop and go. I want it to be a fade. So it'll be darker, and then it'll go back to light. So here I'm going to have a little shadow in the front of this particular little rock here. Maybe break this one up just a little bit. More definition on this rock. A little edge around this one. And moving on down just a little bit down here. Less definition as I get further and further away from the impact area. Okay, now the last thing I want to do is I'm going to add in the figure. This is the rock star. This is the one, this is what the painting is all about, the hiker. So this is okay. So I use the same brush, and I'm going to go ahead and put in the figure. I'm going to use a smaller brush, so I don't. Only because of detail, I'm going to the number 12 natural hair from Silver Brush. Only for detail, use a smaller brush. In other words, all the way through the painting, use a larger brush as you can. It helps you cover the areas faster, and a lot looser with a larger brush. But as you get down to the end where you want to add in detail, then you use a finer brush. For detail, small areas, and for emphasis on a particular section. Now I'm going to make this, I'm not going to make this one very fancy. This is going to be more of a silhouette now of this particular hiker up here in the mountain trail. So it'll be more of a silhouette. I could put color on, I could put a backpack on here. I could put a colored shirt. There's a lot of things I could do. But I want to simplify. And the last thing I'll put in is the head. And I'm going to add a little walking stick here, a little hiking stick. Okay. Yeah, look over the final painting. I've added in a little bit of darks here in the rock areas to bring in the bring your focus into the impact area, which is right here. And I left all the other values alone. And notice here that the direction now, your eye will go up the path to here. It's also, your eye will also come down here from the top of the mountain. And the curve, even the curve of the tree, is going to bring you back down to the impact area. So everything points into this area. I've got a strong horizontal, very strong horizontal, and a very strong vertical, which will pull you into the impact area. Okay, that was one of the emphasis for the design. Okay, there was my value plan, and there's my final painting. Okay, so there were 3 versions I did. I did 3 versions up to this point of this particular painting. I'd like to get your comments back if you thought either one of the others were, and I'm going to put them all on the probably Facebook and show you. I'll probably publish all 3, but this is the one that's going to be in the video. Let me come back over to my main camera and let me turn off my light here. That overhead light gives a big glare here, but the tip for today, which I wanted to show you, was to use a minimum amount of colors in your watercolors, and it gives you unity in your painting. And let me bring the you see the unity, the browns, the grays, even the blues of the sky, a little bit of purple, but with a minimum number of color in the palette, you can make a very effective painting and give you a lot of unity. And you really don't need a lot of colors when you do a landscape or even a regular painting. Try to minimize. It gives you unity, and that's a tip for today. Try to provide or create unity in your painting. So don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Give me a thumbs up. It helps my rating. And leave me some comments, some questions. I'd love to get back to you, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can and right away. On Facebook, give me a like, a thumbs up, and also leave some comments. I'd like to hear from all of you. So that's a conclusion of today's broadcast. I really enjoyed this painting, and I hope you did too. Remember, there was I did an A, B, and a C, 1, 2, 3, and identified those during the discussion of the process. So if you want to make a comment on those, I'd like to hear from you also. But I'll put those on probably Facebook as a separate post to show you all 3 of the paintings. So I'll be back again next week on Thursday at 2 o'clock. So I'll see you then. Bye for now.